Oh, great.
Did you at least watch the Bills game?
We are unmuted, so people in the room, we are unmuted. I knew they were playing, I saw the glimpses. There've been a lot of Squid meets lately.
Oh, we were close. We didn't make it on TV, but we were close.
We look for you.
We were sitting first row.
It's there. Like my look.
That's too cold.
It was warmer there than it is here.
I got the Elvis. They just show him.
Yep.
What they call him? My wife asked, is it Buffalo?
Bill,
Buffalo Elvis, Buffalo.
Bill's always.
Close enough. Tyler, did you get a chance to stay? Elvis?
There's one, there's a box on the windowsill.
Saturday, night, Sunday night. Because we couldn't.
He went early.
Couldn't go.
Weather, yeah.
Couldn't go anywhere.
Would you have gone to the game in Kansas City?
Yes,
That was too
we're trying to go back to Buffalo this week. Might take this weekend off.
One night game.
Sure.
Hello, Moto.
Just the time. Let's start.
Yes. Yes. Otherwise, I'll just.
Yes.
Oh.
Well, folks, it's 7 o'clock. You rise, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 2 is agenda additions, corrections, and modifications.
Let's take attendance.
I'll make the motion to, oh, we got to take attendance. I'm like, excuse me.
Sorry.
Attendance.
You're going
Sorry.
ahead.
I'm trying to get through this.
Moto Johnson.
Here.
Katie Johnston. Here. Diana Mendoza. Here. Nikki Pettit.
Here.
Tyler Wilson.
Here.
Robin Vaughn. Here. John Brotherton.
Here. Now we'll go next to number 2. Additions, corrections, and modifications to the agenda. I'll make the motion to approve the agenda, removing and correcting items as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tyler.
Moto Johnson.
Aye.
Katie Johnston.
Aye.
Diana Mendoza. Nikki Pettit. Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Robin Vaughn.
Aye.
John Brotherton.
Aye. Number 3, public comments.
All right. Board, you are aware, if you haven't checked your email, I'm aware at this point of 3 emails that are intended for public comment per the board rules. Those are to be entered into the board packet at the next meeting. If the board would like, I can enter those into the board packet as early as tomorrow so that they're available for the public to see, but that's up for you to tell me. I can either enter them in the packet as soon as you tell me to do or wait till the next meeting.
I recommend this.
I can do it.
Yep.
And then they're available to the public.
Okay, thank you. Any public comments? We have one. Kayla. Step
Where do
up.
I go? I go here?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Put you on the spot.
All right, and
Hello. Good
you have
evening.
5 minutes, there's a timer on the screen.
Cool. I'm gonna sit down too.
Well, I know you're nervous, so
All right,
just relax. I know you've never done this before, okay?
I haven't. So I'm the music teacher at East Lawn. You got an invitation from me back in November for all of our, or many of our school events that we have. So I have come with an updated list of save the dates that you are invited. Our WARE program is going to be, or I should say our WARE showcase is gonna be tomorrow. However, should school get canceled or evening activities be canceled. I'm just letting you know the kids will be able to perform in April at our spring showcase. And I say showcase and not concert because it is a concert and the kids are performing, but we also have an art show. And I just saw it, and it's really, really cool. So we have an art show planned. PE has a wall of movement that is displayed on our back gym wall. Also, I worked with our ABL teacher with choreography, with movement principles in mind, such as like crossing the midline. So that was really great to get to work with her. And then for our technology portion of it, we will be displaying pixel art that our students have created using Google Sheets. And our library has created a book walk throughout the entire school, in both English and Spanish, to the book One Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Heaps, which is what the entire program is based on, and that will be throughout the entire school. That will be up through the end of the month. The showcases is first, third, and fourth grade. But this will allow for all of the grades to participate in some way during the school day. So I really, really hope that you are able to make the showcase, that we have the showcase. Oh, and our students are doing the presenting too. So I don't get up there, I say thank you at the end, but the kids do all of that good stuff in the show. It's really cool to see them shine up there. So on your save the date is the winter showcase. We will have our family dance night in February. That's all grades at East Lawn. Dr. Woods knows I love to dance and I love to, you are more than welcome to come into my room anytime and we will do a dance with you. One of my favorite things to do. They all know that I love to do that as well. And then, one thing that I did add on this one is our African American History Month celebration is going to be at JW Ayer. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be on the 24th. That's an all-district event, and we're also going to have an art show there, and we're going to have a speaker, and it's going to be really cool. So more about that stuff coming later.
That's the 23rd, right, Kayla? It's Friday the 23rd.
Did I say the 24th?
It's okay, it's Friday the 23rd.
My bad, you can just cross that out. Maybe it's free, I teach music, not math, and okay, so
What time is it tomorrow?
tomorrow it starts at 6 o'clock. Don't get there before 5:45. The doors are gonna be locked.
You have a minute and a half left.
Oh, I don't know. You're more than welcome to come join me at any time in the classroom. I would love to have you at East Lawn to see what our students are doing, so.
Kayla, thank you so much.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Good night. Just to you. And then remember the dates wrong.
Yep.
Thank you.
Public comments as far as I know. And we'll go to number 4, which is consent agenda items.
Okay. I have one person to introduce as part of the consent agenda. Are you ready to do this? Come on up so that you have to sit in the hot seat. Within the consent agenda is my recommendation for the appointment of a new assistant principal at Broad Meadow Elementary School. So I'm gonna read the bio that she just emailed me. This is Colette, everyone. Okay,
Welcome.
all right.
Thank you.
So this is Colette's 21st year in education. She has a master's in educational leadership from UIUC and a bachelor's in elementary education from Valparaiso, the Indiana one. So I asked her to write a bio and I'm gonna read it here. Is prior to becoming an assistant principal, Colette served RCS as the instructional coach for East Lawn Elementary School for 2 years. The bulk of her career has been as a classroom teacher, serving in Mahomet Seymour School District, Wooddale School District, Cass School District 63, and the Archdiocese of Chicago. Outside of work, she is a mom of 3 active kids, Nora, Claire, and Charlie. Got them right. And she and her husband have been married for 15 years. As a family, they enjoy traveling, eating, playing games, doing puzzles, and watching their kids in various sporting and dance events. Colette wrote, I am excited returning to RCS and working with all the knowledgeable and dedicated staff and getting to know all of the families. So we anticipate Colette's going to start mid-February at some point. So welcome, Colette.
Thank you for having me. Wasn't well prepared to.
You just have to sit there. Yeah. And the board might ask any questions of
Much
you.
better answering questions than just talking about.
Good quality, I think.
All right. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to let her go back to her seat.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. And then after they vote, which hopefully they approve you, you can leave and no one will judge. Okay. So within the packet tonight, I really needed to update. Personnel items, we do not have a wage scale for general maintenance. That's just carrying over from last month. Donations and grants, Lindsay Brotherton, not the teacher, but the daughter of a board member here, donated money to the district. And then we also received the Illinois School District Library Grant in the amount of $1,354. So that is an annual grant we receive for our libraries. The board is asked to approve the semi-annual destruction of the verbatim records of all closed meetings from July 2022 and older. So that's anything older than 18 months, you're authorizing us to go ahead and dispose of it. And then the semi-annual review of closed meeting minutes. In the prior 6 months, we had a record of only 2 closed sessions, which is awesome. So we're asking you to designate the superintendent to prepare the budget for fiscal year 25. Again, these are all ordinary things. And then we do need to update one banking record. Yasmin in our business office has changed her name. And probably quite some time ago, and we're just now getting around to doing this.
Sure. Would like to make the motion? Tyler, I'll tell you. No, I'm sorry. I'm just teasing him a little bit. Motion to approve the consent agenda items, including personnel report as submitted with the stipulation that each individual is required to comply with all requirements for new hires as indicated in Illinois statutes and RCS board policy and procedures, including ratification of bills prepaid by the finance manager under board policy 4.50. Wait a second.
I second.
Thank you.
John Brotherton.
Aye.
Robin Vaughn. Aye. Tyler Wilson.
Aye.
Ricky Pettit.
Aye.
Diana Mendoza. Aye. Katie Johnston. Norman Johnson.
We move to number 6. 5.
The resolution to enter into guaranteed energy savings.
Okay, number 6. Number 6.
All right.
Would you like to tell us about
Yes,
this
I will.
guaranteed energy savings contract?
Welcome to the new central office space. That's the first time for some of our board members, I think. After the meeting today, any of the public and the board members, I can give you a very quick tour of the building. And we can go over and see the school side if you haven't seen it yet. Obviously, at the last meeting, you approved the installation of a new carpet. This is not the new carpet.
Shucks.
Please don't worry. The new carpet has yet to be installed. So what we're looking at today is a resolution to enter into a guaranteed energy savings contract with Weir in the amount of $112,000. We may qualify for rebates from the village power on the amount of up to $20,500. It depends on how much is still available through the village power. This project is to convert the electrical fixtures to LED and upgrade energy control in the space leased by Rancho City Schools at this location. So it's the central office side and the school side. It is projected that the energy savings costs for this project will pay back in 3 to 6 years. This project followed the required process for an RFP, which is a request for proposal. We're not required to do a bid on this, but we are required to do a request for proposal. So are there any questions on that? This is similar to what, it's not similar, it's the same thing that we already done in our 5 schools. So we're just upgrading the space now.
I have a quick question. So in the packet, the bid itself was different numbers. Could you explain how that worked out? Like why it's like 40,000 for the bid and then 112?
So you had to look at, their proposal factored in the $20,000 rebate. So on the contract, we actually have to pay the full amount. We may not get the rebate. So that's just I don't know why they do it that way, but that is good. So even when we went to write the contract, we initially had the amount of less the rebate, or including the rebate, so we had to go back and redo it because we have to pay the full amount. And then we request for the full rebate. The other thing that's unique about this contract is it's one of the few I've seen where we actually pay, I believe it's 50%, and that's typical, is my understanding, of the guaranteed energy contracts. It's really so the vendor can purchase the materials. Did that answer your question?
How much is the city kicking in on this?
So the potential, they're not, no.
So if we leave this building, the lights come with us, or do they stay?
They would, we could take them, I think. Tyler, we are, Board Member Wilson, we are here 5 years for sure, and we have the option to extend for 15 years. So I view it as it is something that's going to pay itself back in that short time.
And we have the money for this?
Yes. So I didn't say that, but this is another project that we're going to be spending out our remaining ESSER funds. This is a qualified project.
Have we talked to the city if they would chip in anything other than the 25,000 or 20,500 since this is their building? And I understand we have a lease. But
So honestly, I mentioned it, I brought it up, I've got no take.
I'm all for changing to energy efficient. It's just
And to be fair, we're not doing all of the space. So things like the auditorium that are at the front of the building, the entryway, those things are not being converted because technically those aren't spaces we lease. So
Is it possible to negotiate this into the new contract in 5 years?
yes,
The upgrades?
yes. We could revisit the utility portion. Village has been a very good landlord so far. I don't see that changing. You know, we had a the water line break today in a heating unit. They were out within 30 minutes cleaning it up. So, I mean, they've been very responsive to any of our, as has the church. So that, good.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution to enter into guaranteed energy savings contract. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second it? Thank you.
John Brotherton,
Aye.
Robin Vaughn,
Aye.
Tyler Wilson,
Aye.
Nikki Pettit, Diana Mendoza, Katie Johnston, Rhoda Johnson.
Aye. All right.
Let's move on to number 7.
All right.
2024-2025 school year calendar. You're
Oh
on.
my goodness.
It's on here.
Yep, we're gonna have to table that if we can until the next meeting. I did not put that in the packet.
I was about to say, I didn't see that.
Yeah, now that you did, I haven't done that yet. So
Well,
we were just finalized it in our meeting on Monday, and it was Tuesday. We're ready to go with it, but I did not provide it to
we're
you.
going to table this.
Or you can vote to approve the calendar you haven't seen.
No.
I would recommend we
Not that
table
silly.
it. I would recommend we table it, so. I
Is that okay,
apologize.
everybody, we table it? Yeah. Did you vote or anything on that?
No.
Okay, moving to number 8, discussion possible reorganization of East Lawn and Pleasant Acres School.
Okay, so board, please bear with me. This is, I presented this to the staff at East Lawn and Pleasant Acres. It took an hour, but I'll leave out the jokes, and they asked a lot of questions, which is good. So I'm going to try to do this in a much shorter time frame, but this is very similar to the presentation I did on January 2nd for the staff at both East Lawn and Pleasant Acres, okay? Just so the public's aware, I have shared this presentation with the board previously, but this will be the first time we're really walking through and explaining. In your packet was also a summary memo that was available to see prior to the meeting, as well as it was available to the public before the meeting. All right, so I'm going to kind of go through here. Hopefully you can see a screen. You can see numbers. Can you see those? I cannot see them because I don't have my glasses, but I've got them here. So I need to walk through really the rationale for how we are at a point where we need to make some decisions about organization of East Lawn and Pleasant Acres for next year. Last year, this shows the enrollment and the staffing and the number of classroom teachers. The number of classroom teachers means that is your traditional kindergarten teacher, okay? We have a lot more teachers in the building. That's in the staff number. The staff number is teachers, administrators, custodians, teaching assistants. Classroom teachers, that's an important number because that's how many classrooms we have to have. That's the actual space. So in 22-23, East Lawn had 19 classroom teachers, which meant they had to have 19 classrooms specifically for those traditional teaching situations. That does not include art, music, PE, library, which also use spaces in the building. What I can tell you is in 22-23, putting 19 classroom teachers was a stretch for East Lawn. Also, you can note the enrollment of K-5. So in 22-23, there's a big difference in enrollment between the two schools. Yes, Pleasant Acres did have the pre-K program in there, but they really operate as a separate program. So there's more students in that building, but the staffing for K-5 is based on K-5 enrollment. So we don't put extra staff, K-5 staff at Pleasant Acres because they have pre-K. And the total enrollment of those two schools was 544. We had 33 classroom teachers and 89 staff. 23-24, so this is this year. So one of the things I was attempting to do was we needed to. I went back one slide, yes.
How is it that you have a decimal for the staff? How's that?
So that is, we do not cut them in half, but and usually that is some of our special education folks. So like a speech pathologist might be one day a week in East Lawn, one day a week in Pleasant Acres. You start dividing them up enough and then it ends up being 0.07. I should just round that.
It would make more sense.
Yes, but it's also how we assign the salary accounts and things like that. So we were looking at how do we address this imbalance. And at one point in the year last year, East Lawn I think was closer to 330, but that was their average for the year. So, and also 19 rooms was not actually working. So we shifted for this year the 5th graders to Pleasant Acres. One of the pieces that was missed is, as you can see here now, the enrollment is up significantly at Pleasant Acres. They have been over 300 for parts of the year. Yes, we shifted the 5th graders, but almost all of their siblings also asked to move with the families. And so that shifted the overall enrollment at Pleasant Acres even higher. That also requires the use of 18 classrooms at Pleasant Acres. We were only able to do that this year because the pre-K program was not there. So pre-K was using 7 classrooms, if I recall correctly. You can also see from the prior year that we have increased staff in both of those buildings. So we went from 89 total staff up to 100. So we are increasing the number of staff. The enrollment is increasing, but here you can see the side by side from year to year. The next year, what we're estimated at is we'll have about 565 kids in those buildings. I do want to point out there is definitely an unknown variable that is possibly coming into our community. And that is, if you've watched the news and you've seen about immigration right now at our southern border, I do know that East Lawn picked up 8 new bilingual students this week, okay? And without getting into it too much, we do think we're starting to see, we don't know how much we're gonna get, but we do think we are now getting some of those students that have not been in our community yet. So the problem is what to do 24, 25 and beyond. As a reminder, we made temporary changes for this school year to address enrollment at East Lawn and the anticipated move of pre-K from Pleasant Acres. Pre-K is returning to Pleasant Acres, and Pleasant Acres will permanently lose the use of 4 classrooms. Previously, pre-K used 7 classrooms. So the question that the district has to ask is, how do we provide the optimal education setting for the 565 students, the K-5 students who will be at East Lawn and Pleasant Acres, but within parameters? So I love that many teachers have suggested to me that we just build an even bigger addition on Pleasant Acres. That's not a realistic parameter to spend several more $1 million to enlarge a building when we do have capacity in our existing buildings to accommodate all of our K-5 students. So that's what I mean by parameters. Okay. Some parameters that we had to consider. So what are our rules that we have to put in place when looking at what we can do with the 565 students? Realistically, Pleasant Acres can accommodate 16 classrooms next year for K-5. East Lawn, we've already established, can comfortably accommodate 18 classrooms. This doesn't mean the enrollment can't go up or down in those buildings, but we cannot just add a teacher into one of those buildings if enrollment goes up to a certain point, because there's no classroom for the teacher. Another one that comes up is, can't we just shift kids to Broadmeadow and Northview? So not really is the answer. So Broadmeadow and Northview do not have capacity to add an entire strand. So they cannot add K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is 6 classrooms. So they don't have any building that can just take 6 classrooms of kids. And also they don't, Broadmeadow is the school with the most classrooms that are underused, but it's not 6. And Northview also has most of our self-contained special education programming, and that requires additional classroom spaces for those students. So we have 4 classrooms, but then we have spaces that we use for related service providers. We do need to consider balancing enrollment by demographics. So I'm talking, when the demographic points we looked at mostly were going to be race, ethnicity demographics, and special education, whether students qualify for special education. Another thing I need to get out there is bilingual programming is required. So I have been asked, why do we have to offer bilingual? We do, okay? It's a legal requirement, just like we have to provide special ed. Just like we have to teach reading, okay? And the other one is we cannot have a school that is solely bilingual students.
Why?
So within bilingual programming, students in a bilingual program are required to have exposure to English-speaking peers. So if we created a school that only had bilingual students in it, then the students wouldn't have exposure to English speaking peers.
Oh, because the teacher being English speaking?
As peers would have to be children their
Right,
own age, right? So,
Okay.
yeah, and because honestly, if we could do that, that would be a relatively simple solution. But we also, there is the reality of issues of segregation that would go along with that. You may have noticed in the paper, I mean, East Lawn is the highest, after the International Prep Academy, they were first, right? The second highest enrollment of like Hispanic students already in Champaign County. So anyways, the bilingual program is required, and we cannot have a school that's solely bilingual students. So again, how do we provide the optimal setting within these parameters? Any questions yet? Board? All right, so I do want to assure everyone, and I shared this with the teachers, that we looked at a lot of different variables, a lot of different options. I'm only sharing 4 that we went through. If you think of something new, we probably considered it. If we didn't, we'll consider it. So one idea is just return to what we were doing last year. Okay, so take the 5th graders, put them back at East Lawn. The problem is that we would need at least 20 classroom teachers at East Lawn. And in order to not hit 20, we would look at having to do split classes in our monolingual program. We'd also be back in the same situation where we have this very imbalanced enrollment of 229 at Pleasant Acres, 336 at East Lawn. We would have split bilingual classrooms at Pleasant Acres. We have had split bilingual classrooms at Pleasant Acres the last, ever since we shifted the bilingual program 4 years ago. We've had split classes. But ultimately, East Lawn cannot accommodate 20 classroom teachers. So the second one is have East Lawn be a bilingual, have all the bilingual students at East Lawn with a strand of monolingual students. And then have Pleasant Acres be a monolingual school. So we would no longer have part of the bilingual program at Pleasant Acres. So this one is a viable option. Looking at the classrooms, it would be 18 teachers, 18 classrooms at East Lawn, 14 teachers at Pleasant Acres, so it would fit in the parameters that we have. So I'll go into more detail on that one in a bit. Option 3 would be have both schools as K-5 monolingual schools, and one school be K-2 bilingual and one school 3-5 bilingual. That requires 18 classroom teachers, and Pleasant Acres cannot accommodate 18 classroom teachers. So the 4th option is one school of the 2 being K-1-2 and one school of the 2 being 3-4-5. So this is a viable option. It requires 15 teachers at each school. Both schools would have an even demographic balance of bilingual and monolingual students in them. So looking through this, then we get to, okay, there's really 2 of these that are viable within the parameters, and I'm renaming them option A and option B, and I'm going to go through each one in more detail now. So the first one I'm going to talk about is option A, which is East Lawn having all of the bilingual program with monolingual students, and PA, Pleasant Acres, being only a monolingual school. So I know that's probably a little hard for you to see. So what I'm showing here, this makes more sense to a teacher, but let me walk you through it. So this top school would be East Lawn in this model. So you can see that we are projecting next year in kindergarten, we'll have 34 bilingual kindergartners. We would have 2 teachers, an FTE just means full-time equivalent. We'd have an average class size of 17. In that same school, we would have at kindergarten, we're projecting about 16 monolingual students. We would have 1 kindergarten teacher, So in total at kindergarten, we would have 50 kids, 3 teachers. Average class size would be 16. You can see that average class size is going to fluctuate, how many teachers we need is going to change. Down here in this model would be Pleasant Acres. So you see there's no bilingual students, no bilingual staff, and that shows you what their numbers would come in at. Again, these are projections. The only real variable we have in our district in projections is kindergarten. Okay, so our enrollment has been fairly stable, but we just don't know how many kindergartners are coming in from year to year. So whenever you see these projections, you'll see that kindergarten and the first grade are typically the same number. It's because we just assume what we have in kindergarten this year we'll have in first grade next year. And that is not accurate, but there's no accurate, real accurate way to do it. All right, so looking at option A. So these are just comments on option A. Starting with 18 classrooms used at East Lawn limits the ability to grow the bilingual program. So, and I'll show you a slide here in a minute that the bilingual student population is our fastest growing student population. So our total enrollment is not increasing, but within our enrollment, the bilingual student population is increasing. So, however, within those 18 classrooms, we could increase by about 55 students, which is a lot. But some grade levels are actually already near capacity. So if we could project 55 kids into the grade levels where we have seats, that would be perfect, but we aren't able to do that. As an example, I said as next year's second grade, we can, based on the class size maximum, we can have 2 more bilingual students enroll before we have to address the class size. So once we get 3 enrolled, we have to address the class size. There's still going to continue to be an imbalance of K-5 enrollment. We would be looking at reassigning support staff from East Lawn to PA because the enrollment at PA would be significantly higher. We would gain efficiencies in the bilingual program because we would no longer need to have our bilingual support staff at Pleasant Acres. They would all be housed in one building. I do have concerns about the demographics of this split across the 2 schools, and I'll show you some numbers on that in a minute. A concern that teachers have with this model, I do too, but you'll hear it right away from teachers, is that if at East Lawn there is only 1 strand of monolingual teachers, meaning only 1 English kindergarten, 1 English first grade, that does create some challenges for teachers. You know, the obvious one is what happens when 2 kids just cannot get along? Okay, in a school with more sections, you can put those kids in different classrooms. In this model, you wouldn't be able to do that. This would require looking at the boundaries for East Lawn and Pleasant Acres. And the boundary would change for the monolingual student population. The numbers that I'm using, so anyone watching at home, this is not official, this is not decided, but what we used was Briarcliff, south of Briarcliff. The currently kids who are south of Briarcliff that go to East Lawn, in these enrollment projections, they would be going to Pleasant Acres. We would need to consider transportation needs. Likely all of our monolingual students would continue to be able to walk to their school, but obviously some of the kids currently at Pleasant Acres would need to have transportation to go to East Lawn. So these are just a lot of the things we would have to consider. This shows our bilingual enrollment over time, just as an example. Since 2018, our enrollment as a percentage of the population has gone from 18% to 24%. That's 100 students, is about what that comes out to. Interestingly, Pleasant Acres now, so when you look at what is a student's homeschool, regardless of if they're in the bilingual program, the students in the bilingual classrooms, this is where their homeschools would be. So another thing that's come up is, why don't we just return all of the kids back to their homeschools? Well, 11% of the kids at Broadmeadow would be very hard to provide the level of services that we do right now. So that is the reason initially we went to the bilingual program, being in only 2 schools, so that we could provide more services, and we provide a lot more bilingual services than we did 4 years ago. But the point on this one is it's the growth of that population. So we're going to have to continue to address how we're serving the bilingual students and where that happens. Because what if in another year, so if it keeps going on this trend line, in 3 years, we will have 55 more students in the bilingual program. And so will we have enough space in 5 years for those students in the K-5 program? Okay, demographics. So this is the demographics of our schools currently, our K-5 schools. This is not official state data. This is a snapshot of one day. As you can see, currently the balance district-wide is, we have very few Asian students. African-American students, that's in this report, it came out as Black, Hispanic, multiracial, and white. So that's what those letters across the top mean. Our Black students are 31.7% district-wide. Broadmeadow has the highest percentage enrollment of African-American students. As we would expect, Pleasant Acres and East Lawn have the highest enrollment of Hispanic students. One thing I always have to be clear on too, though, is remember, all Hispanic students are not bilingual, and all of our bilingual students are not Hispanic. However, most of our bilingual students are Hispanic, okay? We only service Spanish in our bilingual program, but we do have other languages represented and multiple races represented within that bilingual population. Okay, the other one to look at would be special education population. So Broadmeadow and Northview are over 20% of their students have IEPs. That is because they have specialized programs in those buildings. So the average district-wide is close to 19%. East Lawn and Pleasant Acres currently are below that average, which makes sense to me because Northview and Broadmeadow host special programs. So if a school that was not hosting specialized programs were above the district average, that would be a concern, okay? So what am I looking at here? Nobody's napping yet, I hope. It's kind of dry. All right, so on option A, if we went to what I was just sharing with option A, what would the demographics of the schools look like? East Lawn, in those bilingual classrooms, would be 94% Hispanic, which we would anticipate within a bilingual program, within our bilingual program. Interestingly, the rate of students with IEPs is quite a bit lower than our district average among students who are in bilingual programs. The reason for that is because we are typically looking at a student meeting certain benchmarks in English before we would evaluate them for special ed. Say typically, it's not a hard and fast rule. So it's not uncommon for bilingual students to start to be identified for special education later in elementary school than an English-speaking student. The monolingual class, so this is the English-only classroom, would now be 55% Black, less than 5% Hispanic. The special ed population in those classrooms would be over the district average. Okay. So overall, this is what the demographics of the school would look like, which again, this is not necessarily something we wouldn't anticipate. The concern I see is what's happening in this one monolingual strand. Okay. What would it look like at Pleasant Acres in this? Remember, we're removing the bilingual population from Pleasant Acres. So Pleasant Acres is going to look like this. Again, the special education count is going to be exceeding the district average. And otherwise, I was a little surprised at how balanced it still came out is on race. Any questions on this at this point? All right, so now let's look at option B. So this is the idea of one of the schools being K-1-2 and one of the schools being 3-4-5. Okay, so I have not identified which school is which, so please don't make assumptions. So we know that in kindergarten, we would have 34 bilingual students. So we saw that same number on the previous slide. We would have 2 kindergarten teachers, average of 17, but at the same time in that school, we would have 55 monolingual students in at least 3 classrooms, and that would be our class size average. Now, what I can tell you is what would likely happen in that building is that we would look at assigning an additional kindergarten teacher because, and I'll talk about how we have some staffing that we can assign strategically into that, but these numbers are just looking at our class size maximums that we have, so that's how we project this. And then school B would be 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So what you can see though is the enrollment balance between the 2 buildings, 286 in one building, 279 in the other. So this does allow for growth in the bilingual program by up to 1 strand. So we can, what's projected there is 15 classrooms. No, it wasn't. Yes, so 15 classrooms. We would be able to accommodate an additional strand of bilingual. The enrollment and demographic numbers would be balanced. I did not run the demographics on these 2 buildings because they would be very similar. I can't even say that we would have fewer IEPs in a K2 building because there's a lot of K2 students who have speech-only IEPs that tend to get exited as they age up. So a consideration here is transportation. So in this model, all students are going to be able to walk to one of the schools, all right? And any students living beyond 1.5 miles will need busing. We are considering, if this is an option the board went to, how could we address some of the concerns parents are gonna have with having kids in 2 buildings by opening up and potentially providing more transportation options to families. And there's a lot of considerations we would have on that, and it would be a financial decision ultimately, but so what I'm getting at is, I might drop my kindergartner off at one school, but I have a 3rd grader in the other school. So would we have a bus that would go from one school to the other, so a parent only has to do 1 drop off? So we're looking at options like that. We could also shrink the distance on the busing to under 1.5 miles. We just don't get state reimbursement for that, so there is an increased cost. One of the concerns, and you got some of that concern in the emails from the staff today, was staff disruption. And by that I mean not that the staff are disruptive. Kayla, yes, but you weren't even listening. I just said you were disruptive. So don't talk. So it's the disruption to the schools by shifting staff around. There will be much more staff shifting in option B than there would be in option A. Option A, we're primarily shifting bilingual teachers. In option B, we would be shifting quite a few more. Now, an interesting thing with going to a K2 school and a 3-5 school is it creates an efficiency which gives us 4 to 5 teacher positions than we are currently using. So 4 to 5 fewer classroom teacher positions than we use now. So a consideration we have is, and I've been very upfront about this, we aren't cutting any teacher positions. So it's going to give the buildings flexibility in how they use those positions. That's why I said the K-1-2 school, the building could decide, we want a 4th kindergarten class so that we have smaller class sizes. That's going to be a building decision. And again, I'll talk about that a little more. Every teacher has at least one partner teacher. So we don't have any teachers who are, I'm the only kindergarten teacher in the building. That's not going to happen. As I said already, a consideration has to be that we'll have families with students in 2 elementary schools. We already have that, but it's pretty limited right now. This would make it much more common for those groups. Other considerations, both schools would have at least 2 unallocated teacher positions. As I said, principals will have flexibility in how to use those. We also recognize that doing this shift in order to do it well would require some increases in staffing that would make it go better. And so, for instance, we would increase our English as a second language staffing so that right now, Pleasant Acres and East Lawn each have 1.5. Between the 2 schools, there's 1.5 ESL teacher. In this model, there would be justification to have 1 ESL teacher at each building. Same thing as right now, we have 1 bilingual interventionist serving 2 days a week at one building, 3 days a week at the other building. In this model, we would justify saying each school needs a bilingual interventionist. And that same rationale comes in for special education. We want to make sure that there is at least 1 bilingual special education teacher in each building. We do currently have 2 bilingual special education teachers. Is there 1 full-time in each building? They're 1 split. Yeah. So right now it's 1 is at East Lawn and Pleasant Acres and 1 is at just East Lawn. So that would give us some balance in there. Next steps. So I hope we have some discussion about this afterwards, after I'm done here. But I want to emphasize which school is which on option B is not determined. Both schools make sense to have K-1-2 in them. And I've been there's an argument that both schools could have 3 through 5. And that's kind of my reasoning for it. My initial thought is it makes more sense to have K-1-2 at Pleasant Acres because the pre-K program is there. But there also isn't a huge amount of crossing over that happens between our current, when Pleasant Acres had the pre-K, there wasn't a lot of crossover happening there anyway. Having East Lawn have K-1-2 means there's a lot more staff that would not be displaced out of Pleasant Acres just based on the way the staffing is set up right now. So there's reasons, and this bottom line is what obviously was for my teacher audience. It is most likely that every teacher would have a similar position. So it's very unlikely that if you're teaching kindergarten this year, you won't be able to teach kindergarten next year. It could happen, but it's just not likely because we'll have some staff turnover that will allow for staff to slot into the positions they want to be in. And obviously some teachers would move buildings in this model. In option A, teachers are also moving buildings. There's just not as many. We talked about not moving, we would not have a reason to involuntarily move administrators, office clerical staff, specials teachers like music and art, non-classroom support staff such as custodians, cafeteria workers. There would be no reason that I can anticipate to involuntarily move those folks. So then I'm doing it right now, presenting what I see as the most viable options to the board now. Following the meeting and your guidance today, I am planning to host at least 2 parent-family forums prior to the February board meeting, and we would do 1 in English and 1 in Spanish at least. And then I would hope to have a recommendation approved by the board at the February meeting because we do have to make a decision, if not just for the well-being of the teachers, wondering what's going on, and they're nodding at me right now. So, also, if we were to go with option B, the buildings would have to have a process for how they're gonna allocate the extra teacher positions. Where are they going to strategically add a position or two that is going to get them the most benefit for their buildings? A concern staff have, and I agree, is we have to have a fair process for determining if we have to involuntarily reassign staff. And their contract does speak to that somewhat, so seniority is a consideration, certification is a consideration. Ideally, everyone will end up where they want to be, and so we'll try to make that happen. There's a lot of work we'll have to do on either option, on transportation, and what changes we need to make for that. Another thing that came up from the staff at Pleasant Acres this year, when we moved all those fifth graders to Pleasant Acres this year, we did not have a plan of transitioning those students or their families. And that is something we are aware that we would need to do a much more focused job on that this time around, that any of those parents and those students have an opportunity to get into the school that they would be transitioning into ahead of time, so that it's not a shock on day one. This is what happened this year. So I think I'm done. Discussion, comments, questions?
I have some questions. How did you come up with the projections of the increasing of students?
From year to year, or?
Yeah, like how did you determine that it was going, did you have like
There we go. So it's this year, there are 34 kindergartners. I moved them up to first grade. This year, there's 44 second graders. I moved them up to first grade. So it is just shifting them up 1 year.
maybe that's not what I'm talking about. Maybe I'm talking about,
The bilingual population?
yes.
Okay. So all I was saying is if this trend line continues, and since 2018 to 2023 saw an increase of 100 students, in another 3 years, if that trend line continues, we would be at 50, 55 more students. I just did that in my head.
Shouldn't that trend line increase though?
It-
What you said.
It potentially could. I don't,
Eight kids that you just added to East Lawn alone, I mean,
yes.
in the situation that we're in with the immigrants that's now being placed in, Chicago, and I'm guessing, migrate down to Mantua, so that's
And that's
a huge increase.
That is a big unknown for us right now.
What stops us from taking new students and then just depositing them in schools that are low enrollment? So why can't we, you're not, I guess what I'm saying is, students that are in the school district now have established relationships with teachers, with peers, with their walk to school, their parents are, their routine is established, all of that. New students don't have that yet. They're starting fresh. So why not take that student and put them in the school that has the lowest enrollment so we can balance out?
So we do that, kind of, right now. After the start of the school year, if the class size threshold is reached in a school, we will assign a new enrollment to a different building. So what becomes a problem though is we may have to provide special transportation for that student. And if they are bilingual or have a disability, we cannot necessarily do that because they have to be in a building where they can get their services. So a bilingual so the 8 kids that just showed up this week, and I think it's 8 kids. Don't tell me if I'm right or wrong. That's the number I have in my head. I don't know where they live in Rantoul, but they have to go to Pleasant Acres or East Lawn. And in this case, I think they did live in the East Lawn boundaries. But if they had lived in the Broad Meadow boundaries, we would be enrolling them at Pleasant Acres or East Lawn and providing transportation. Because we currently do that. We do have students whose neighborhood school is Broad Meadow or Northview, and they are, we don't have any that we're transporting right now, which is, do we? I don't think we do. That's a parent option, so, but
But if we moved everybody to bilingual schools, like you mentioned before, then this wouldn't be a problem. Because everybody would have a bilingual strand.
So it's a 2-strand program right now.
But if we put it in all schools.
Then we would have a 4-strand program. So that would require, I'm not opposed to that, but that would require adding 12 bilingual teachers to the district.
Would that balance out our enrollment plan?
It would, well, one, as I said at the beginning, we cannot add a full strand at Northview or Broad Meadow without doing the same thing where we would be displacing monolingual classrooms, go somewhere else. Yeah, I mean, a consideration would, the problem with housing, so we at times struggle to provide bilingual services in 2 buildings. So we've been very fortunate in staffing our teaching positions, but we have 1 bilingual speech therapist in the district. She is currently going to 4 buildings. And she only works 4 days a week. So we would need more bilingual speech therapists, and they're golden unicorns. So there's challenges with doing it that way.
My other question, I know I'm like beating you up, I'm sorry.
No, watch it.
My other question is,
You're allowed to do that.
the option we're doing now, where we need the 5th graders that you said wasn't viable, why are we only considering the 5th graders?
We just did that last year going into this year.
I know, but if we're going with that model, why are we only considering 5th graders? Why didn't we consider adjusting the numbers and say moving 2nd graders instead?
At the
Or
time?
3rd graders instead of 5th graders?
Well, at the time, I think I don't know how what I
I
would do.
wasn't here when you guys
Yeah, I
decided to
think-
do that.
In my mind, it was also how many kids were there that we were moving, but also knowing it was 1 year, and then they were moving to Ager. Anyway, so I think if I were to do it again, I would still be looking at 5th grade or kindergarten, right? Instead of pulling a kid out of 3rd grade and then sending them back 4th grade. But yeah, I'd have to go back and look at my notes as to how I came up with 5th grade. And it has been a challenge at Pleasant Acres to have all of those 5th graders. Not because it's the mixing of the kids, they didn't know each other. I think there's a lot of that. What Ager did every year at 6th grade. It just happened at 5th grade. What other questions?
Total classrooms in PA and East Lawn.
Total classrooms.
Right now, as the building sits, how many classrooms are in it?
I need to find that out. Jamie, you know off the top of your
We
head?
have 17 classrums currently this
Te-
year,
Regular classrooms.
classroom teachers, yes.
But then you
But then we
have,
also have a music room, art, ABL, we have a library, and then we have a room for our support staff. So we have a room that is shared amongst 5 people for special education. We have 1 room that is shared for 3 interventionists, another room that is shared with 3 other support staff. So 4 rooms are split between 3 to 5 staff members.
So you have 17 in your building,
Well, 17 classrooms.
classrooms,
But
17
that
class,
doesn't-
you can put 17 classes in your, a 1st grade class, a 2nd grade class, so.
I
over
would
7.
say 17 is much more comfortable than 18 was last
Okay,
we had 19
year.
So we'll
18 in the 1 line.
so we would assume it'd be the same at the other building?
It's a similar sized building, but pre-K is taking 4 rooms.
So, okay, so I'm getting there. 17 in each room, we're gonna subtract 4 for the pre-K when that gets built. That leaves that with 13. You're asking for 15 in each building. 13 is 2 less than 15 in my book.
Yes.
Pretty good at math. And then also, we lose 4 to 6 teachers, don't lose them, they're still on staff. In option B, is that where the optional teacher in the building bidding process and all that would be?
And some of those positions wouldn't require a classroom, right? So if you added a reading interventionist, they don't need their own classroom.
Right.
Necessarily.
So the 17 and the 13, we're looking at 15 in each building. Now what happens to the extra 2 classrooms in the one building, and where do we find the other 2 classrooms in the other?
Hold on. Can you say that again?
17 classrooms at East Lawn, 17 at PA, roughly. Minus the 4 is 13. We're looking at putting 15 in each classroom on option B, 15 classrooms. What happens to the 2 that we don't have and the 2 that we do have in East Lawn? And East Lawn has the 2 extra now. Pleasant Acres is losing, doesn't have 2 because we're at 13.
What happens to the teachers or the
No,
rooms?
what do those rooms become?
Right, so
Because you have in the past used my not so favorite word. of
I haven't said it once tonight.
No, you're pretty good. Of overcrowding. We have
So-
2 extra rooms.
I went through with Jamie, the building principal, and Sammy, the building principal, and we kind of did that, like, okay, once you've got these rooms used for offices, these rooms used for this. So the number we settled on, I was pushing them to make it higher, and is at Pleasant Acres, once the pre-K building is, those rooms are gone, and those are gonna be gone all next year, so they won't have them from day one. Can handle 16 classroom teachers. So what option B is showing 15 classrooms, so they still have 1 vacant room. That 1 vacant room is likely going to be either offices or they'll have an additional classroom teacher.
Where they could split up a larger class.
If there were larger ones, yes, but when I say offices, that is, like, I think I'm looking at these 2 here. How many people share your classroom? Yeah, there's 5 teachers in that 1 classroom.
Well, with aides and teachers.
Yeah, and so the speech therapist is using that room for therapy services. That's where Rachel has her computer and does her planning, so.
It is not ideal for multiple things to be happening with kids in the same classroom.
So
I'll just tell you that.
I guess what
I just wanna know where the rooms go.
where do they,
Or what are they gonna be used for? That was, I mean, how did we go from losing 2 and having 2 extra in 1 building? That's where I was, my math was.
okay,
And you,
Wasn't happening.
does it make sense now?
it does.
Okay, then I'm
Good.
I'm not gonna try and explain it.
Is this gonna be like a permanent option, whatever we select is gonna roll into the following year?
Nothing is permanent, because you guys, and we can change it, but what I have on that first slide of this portion is 24, 25, and beyond.
So
So,
why are we not considering the entire district? I guess what I'm saying is, it doesn't seem fair that we're taking half the town and saying, we're gonna disrupt your lives, and we're not gonna include the rest of the town. Or, why are we not shifting boundaries? So if we're gonna go K through, we're gonna go, if we decide to go the route where we're putting, grade level centers, we should do a district wide, I think. If we're doing, adjusting here and there then we should adjust boundaries. But I don't think we should just randomly select 2 schools and isolate them and their families. I'm not saying I'm for grade level centers, you haven't sold them that yet.
I haven't made a recommendation.
So we've done that before, right?
Yeah, and
Back
it
when Ms.
was
Ramsey was in
challenging.
office and It didn't work. Was it Trenton?
Yeah, 'cause that-
My kid was in the
I think Mr. Brotherton was actually here, and it created a lot of problems. But I was listening to see what different options there was, and maybe it might be a different. But I agree with what you're saying, because it's gonna, one thing I know that the numbers are gonna continue to go up, no matter how you cut the pie on that, especially with the, Latino population. I mean, right now, we're sitting, what, close to 900 in our school district, 900 Latino kids. It's compared to the rest of the school district. Maybe a little more.
1,700 kids, it's about
Okay.
35% of the students.
I mean, and the way it sounds, it's gonna go up. So this problem's gonna be a lot bigger than you think it is, especially if we're only gonna consider 2 schools. Trying to adjust these kids into 2 schools.
I'm thinking along those lines too. I mean, because whatever we do, I don't want it to be a temporary solution, because I don't think it's fair to the kids to keep on changing stuff back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So whatever we do, we need to be smart about our decision. And I know that it needs to be quick because we need to do something for next year, but at the same time, we need to be smart and really think about this all the way through so that we aren't disruptive to these kids, because it's, excuse me, it's not fair to them to disrupt their lives like what you're saying.
It needs to be a long-term solution.
Yes, not a temporary Band-Aid. So my question is similar to Tyler's, and I don't even know if I'm going to be formulating it correctly, but with this screen up right here, you're saying that if we go with option B, there will be 16 classrooms at BA and 18 at EL.
No. That is the capacity of the building. So PA, in any model we look at, Pleasant Acres has 16 classrooms for classroom teachers.
They can house.
Right, but I thought one of those, it said that
Right, so
PA was gonna be at
on the
17
different models,
or something.
and we really looked at option A and option B. On option A, Pleasant Acres would be at 14, and they can hold, it was 16 on the previous
Okay.
screen, right? And then East Lawn would be at 18.
Okay. B is
I would really be curious to see how these numbers shake out if we get it across the district. I'd be more interested to see your options across the district.
Meaning,
Well, obviously, these numbers will change if we consider everybody. If we're gonna consider moving to grade level centers, then, and if we consider the whole district, then the numbers are gonna be different across the board for every school. It's not gonna be the same. And if we're gonna consider, moving boundary lines, if we would do that to balance the schools, then these numbers would change because we're not gonna, the projections would change based on where the student resides.
so, correct. But the schools, the 4 schools are, if you look at just the monolingual student enrollment, so they are balanced. There's very little difference. Each of the 4 schools has 12 teachers per K through 5. So they are already at balance. Broadmeadow and Northview in their monolingual classrooms have a higher enrollment than Pleasant Acres and East Lawn. So there isn't really a way, I'm not saying no, I'm just thinking here, there isn't a way to shift more kids into Broadmeadow and Northview because those classrooms are already closer to our capacity. And you'd also only be talking about shifting monolingual kids.
If we're shifting boundaries though, they wouldn't be at capacity because the boundaries are shifting. You might not have the same neighborhoods that you have right now. So it'd be a whole different set of numbers.
Diane? John? Same thing?
I mean, even if we redistrict, which I think is not, you know, and this is not very well formulated, I'm literally thinking it out. Like the economies of scale, are what I'm thinking of really, like having, you know, we still have such a large bilingual population that I think that, I don't know, it just gets tricky, because like redistricting is great, and I'm not against that. But I don't think it solves the problem, because like that, we're still, I think it still makes more sense to have in some ways a bilingual program as opposed to like a bilingual strand in each school, because really like I know my sister taught, and I know she really valued having a team that she could like run things by and like communicate like issues that were happening and like, hey, I have this problem, like I know you have this, yeah, like let's work this out, let's figure this out. And I worry that if we make it so those programs are not in some way kind of housed together, I worry that the quality of the program suffers. So I don't know, I don't have an answer for you right now or like a good solution. I think it's complicated. I think that if you, yeah.
Because do we have the staff to do that?
Have them go to more than 2 buildings?
Yeah.
No. Not without adding more staff.
And with them being in 2 buildings, what you're saying,
Bounce ideas, like, you know, work things out, like have a good, I mean, you know, it's one thing to make things convenient. And I agree, like I don't want anybody to have to suffer, but I also want the quality of the program to be there.
How many bilingual kids do we have?
The total enrollment is, I'd have to look. It's that one with the graph. I'd have to do the math here. So last year it would have been 24% of 1,700. The calculator. And that's our rough estimate.
So about a quarter.
So 408.
How many bilingual staff do we have?
Staff, I don't have that number, but we have 11 classroom teachers, and I'm just talking K-5. This number, 408, includes the junior high. I can do the number on the other slide. So, K-5 enrolled in the bilingual program next year would be 221 kids projected. Right now, we have 11 teachers. It would go up to 12. That's not counting special education, bilingual staff, reading intervention, or bilingual interventionists. So there are more than just that.
But no matter what, something needs to be done because we want the space to hold.
That is not how you spell bilingual. So for me, what I need to know is what the board would like me to do as next steps.
You're saying you're gonna have 2 community meetings, 2 parent forums,
yes, but if the board is not comfortable with either option that I presented tonight, then I'm not sure what I would be presenting at those meetings. And I'm not asking the board to commit to one or the other. So I'm hearing also, one, we want to see other options, and what would those be?
I'm just, yeah, I'm
Not just
interested to
you,
see
other,
what you were
came up
saying.
from other people. And then, so that would be one thing. So I don't want to call parent meetings and say, this is probably what we're going to do next year, and then that's not what we're going to do.
Belongs to that.
I just want to make sure we're doing what's best for all of our students, not just singling out.
So, and I'll add, I do think that, so when we say long-term solution in schools, 5 years is a long-term solution, okay? Because we cannot control for all the different things that are coming, all right? I do think that both of these options, A and B, give us years before we have to change anything. We haven't had to change anything with the bilingual program in a big way for the last 4 years, right? We've had some shifting and we've had to move classrooms around and minor things, but for the most part, we've been able to keep the bilingual families in the building they started in. Not all of them, okay? I think both of these options would allow that. I think we have more of a long-term solution with something along the lines of option B, because that's going to give us more room to absorb increased enrollment. Again, there's no reason to think our bilingual student enrollment is going to go down. We've talked, it could accelerate more than it has been, but it's been a very stable increase for the last 6 years. It's just, I am concerned that we're going to see a spike in enrollment here soon. But I do think that both of them are reasonable for years. I think option B is going to give us more years. And neither option is perfect or ideal. These are just ideas. And the other thing I have to acknowledge, and I said this with the teachers, is there's nothing that's going to be decided that's going to make everybody happy. I think the teachers understand that. When I say teachers, I mean all the people that work in those buildings. But that's why I think what I've thought through a little more on option B than option A is, what are some of those points of concern that our teachers are going to have and that our families are going to have, and so that we know those are the things in advance that we need to address. So some of you were on the board 3 years ago when we talked about grade level centers, right? And those were a lot of the questions at that time. How are we going to do busing? How are we going to, so we never voted on it because there were so many of those concerns that, and it didn't have to be done, okay? This doesn't have to be done, but something has to be done. And I think there are other temporary solutions that I'll have to bring back to the next board meeting before we move on.
What was the overall feedback when you presented this to the both schools? Just out of curiosity.
Well, I'll give you my version. So, it was like I said, I think there's some people see a positive in Pleasant Acres. For the most part, the staff don't want any change. Okay, that was pretty consistent. They like it. They don't want us to change it, but we would like to return the 5th graders. The bilingual staff are surprisingly mixed on it. They all want to be together, but they're concerned about what being together really looks like. So there's, in either one, A or B, they're together more than they are now. And nobody has a split class. So yeah, keep in mind, of those 35 classroom teachers, 11 of them are bilingual classroom teachers. Yeah, it's just mixed. I mean, that's all I can really say.
But you do have positive feedback.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it that makes sense, okay? And some people are very much okay with it, but as I said,
I'll answer your question.
most people, in general, most teachers are like most people, and they don't want change. They're okay with what they have, so.
You will lose good people.
Possibly. But I don't know. I mean, I think, will some teachers leave and say that it's because of the change? Yes, but are those people going to leave anyway? I don't know. That's always a possibility.
Is taking the temperature of our parents something that we could consider, like a survey?
As part of what my Let's Go Out and Talk was going to be as part of that. So what when we did this the last round, which was a very different conversation, that was about just straight grade level centers. I can tell you that the feedback on that was also very mixed. I would say more against than for. A lot of people drew parallels to the other time that grade level centers happened. That's, I said it then, I'll say it now, very different rationale for doing it. Very different plan for doing it and how it would look also. I think a lot of parents, I heard a lot of feedback from parents at particularly Broadmeadow and Northview that didn't want to leave their neighborhood schools. Any other questions? She wants to ask the teachers.
I just wanted to hear what
Well, I don't mind that.
You're only getting one side. You're only getting their side. You're not getting the other teachers that might disagree with it,
How about the parents that are here?
or the parents. You know, there's two sides to it. I mean,
So
you
are
could
we
go
gonna
ahead and
have-
ask them
Are we
questions.
gonna have a meeting to where they can voice their opinion?
Well, that's what that's my plan to do
Okay.
the public.
Or just go visit the school?
Gotcha.
I'll sign up next time.
Right, and I'll tell you, I do know some of the teachers' individual opinions, and they don't agree, so. And the feedback you got in the emails were, you got those opinions too, so.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying, some of the people aren't here to voice their opinions, so. And then again, you got some teachers and some people that aren't gonna voice their opinion because of what they might feel is repercussions. That wouldn't, So.
What else? Well, I do. I may disappoint some people. May step on their toes. I don't mean to do that. I sat and listened to this whole thing very carefully. And I really appreciate everybody's comments. They're very insightful. I mean that very sincerely. And I try to keep them in mind. But what I think we all can agree on this, that we want the very best for our students, faculty, staff, with the least amount of disruption. And again, going through this again, in my mind, right now, I cannot, I really have a difficult time accepting either option A or B. In my heart, and this may be just plain stubbornness and ignorance, and I really mean that sincerely. I'm not saying this in a false way, I'm saying this very sincerely. I would prefer to have us keep home schools as we have now. And do I have an answer? Besides boundaries, changing boundaries and doing as we did years and years and years ago, when the Shooting Air Force Base was here, and some of you. But I know that was a challenge every year for the administration to come up with a plan to balance the schools out so we would not have one building overloaded with kids. They did it. I sincerely believe, until I'm shown differently, that we could do that. I don't want to see the progress we've made be disrupted even a little bit. I sincerely believe when I go to these buildings, I see progress. And I don't want to see that disrupted. And I'm afraid, again, I'm basing this on just the experience we had before, and you said very clearly and very professionally that this is going to be different. But I think it's going to be a hard sell for parents to say, I'm going to have my kids going to 3 different buildings when I didn't have to. I feel, I'm sorry, I'm getting on my high horse here. I feel that the staff, be it faculty and staff, they have so much that they have to deal with now. If we have more disruptions, why can't we keep it? I guess I think, why can't, that sounds, insightful, I don't mean to be that way. I would like to keep it the way it is. I think we're making progress. And I'm just fearful if we go and do this, we're gonna go through the same trauma that we went through when we did it before. And Robin, if you mind, I'm gonna single you out. I really appreciate everybody's comments, but I appreciate yours about the fairness. I was at a building for many years. The building's no longer here in Maplewood. And we were always considered the least desirable building to go to. And we had a fantastic staff, not because I was there. I taught with some fantastic people. I learned so much from them. I saw what we did. We stuck together. We made it work. We made it better. But maybe I'm getting off track here a little bit, but I really feel that we had a pride there. As Pleasant Acres has a pride, as Eastline has a pride, as Broadman has a pride, as Northview has a pride. And I just wish we could come up with something that would be less intrusive. I'm gonna shut up. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. So what I'm hearing is that we probably don't have sufficient support to move forward with option A or B at this time. So and that's fine. That's the point of the board. Okay. Yes, sir.
Can you send out, or would it be possible to send out in Robin's line, a survey to all family for the whole district, or the K-5 district, as well as the teachers, not just of the 2 buildings?
To ask what?
To ask what their feelings are, like she said, the east side and west side, because that's pretty much what it is, these 2 schools. To see what their, the family's feelings are, and then maybe somehow in that same survey have a specific, if you are a Pleasant Acres, East Lawn person, staff or family, how do you feel about this? Not only do you want to get the Broadman or Northview side, what they think, right? But we're really focusing on the East Lawn. Is there a way to possibly draft up a survey to maybe give us some more guidance and you some more guidance on that to go from there?
Sure.
Sorry.
Nope, I'm saying those, I think then I'm hearing I need to go back to the drawing board and come up with some more possibilities that would be viable for us to do moving forward. Is that fair?
Please speak up. I spoke only for myself. I speak for anybody else.
that's how I feel. I think that there's a certain pride, when teachers have been at schools for so long and students have been at schools for so long. And I know it's, even though my pride is with Plug and Anchors, like even still at 50, and I tell my kids that, they're like, what are you talking about? Northview's the school, that's where your kids went. I was like, not for me. So, I mean, I just think that there's something there when you can stay at a school for all the years instead of switching back and forth.
Really there, I'm a pirate.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you're not.
Right.
You can't call yourself a pirate.
Just not with the little.
Well, I guess I can.
Yeah.
It's like a line item.
I was very discouraged when we did these grade level centers before, because I was a Northview kid and I wanted my son to go there, put him at East Lawn. Totally.
Yeah, but because the pride thing, yeah.
We really have consensus about that. Back again.
Yeah.
Please, sir, this is no reflection on you.
I'm not, I'm just bringing you ideas. I hear you.
I don't.
Thank you for saying that, but, yeah, I can
I trust you before, but
do that, yes.
I just wanna say that whatever decision we make, it is gonna affect families, it's gonna affect staff, but we have to look at all the options that are out there, options are out there, to see how this can least affect staff and families, because it's a very hard decision.
And if we're gonna be disruptive, like we need to be the minimum disruptive as possible. But if we have to be more disruptive, it should be balanced and fair across the district. We have to go like in a major direction, it should be balanced and fair.
Guess what you get to do next is my evaluation, so, all right. All right, there's nothing to vote on, so let me get to the next item.
number 9, information items.
All right, not a lot this month. Information. No FOIAs, that's a first for a while. We did have a teacher get Teacher of the Week this week. Was it Jessica Lodge?
Jessica Lodge, there it is.
But that's in the packet for next month. Your student discipline report is in there. The use of animals in schools. We've had an increasing number of requests for use of animals and therapy animals, so we needed to put some administrative procedures in place for how we're going to manage that. The other thing that came up, so that's what there's a document in your packet that's been shared with our teachers. Yes, I did exempt goldfish. They do not have to do paperwork for goldfish, so that was a joke. And it's true though. So then is atypical transportation of students. That would be another one that has come up more and more frequently, which is what are the parameters where we can transport a child home that's not a school bus? And so we have to put some rules in place on that, and that's what that document's about. That's all I had for information.
New business. Yes.
Sorry.
No.
On the Rise Academy, I'm just asking because I kind of was wondering how that's going in. And on the percentage of the students that's actually in Rise Academy, is it still 95% Black? Or what's the ratio on minority kids?
I do not know, but I can find that out.
And the reason I'm asking that is because one thing I did actually do this time is I actually read through a lot of the disciplinaries. And it seemed like East Lawn and Pleasant Acre has a ton of them. I mean, Ader, of course, is going to have their share. And it just, how do we dictate who is it 6 of them that comes to the Rise Academy? So K-5 is no way.
I think we have one 5th grader at Rise right now. So the board approved it last year for 5th through 8th grade.
Okay, because I noticed, reading through some of those things, some of the disciplinaries, some of them pretty harsh. And I'm thinking, wow. And
Oh, can I interrupt? Would you explain what,
Well,
the penalties?
Yeah, well, not penalty.
Okay.
I think the school, I'm guessing the school did what they felt was right on the disciplinary part of it. So I'm not saying that that's wrong or right. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say some of the things that I was reading are some of the same things that I've seen other kids do as well. And in other words, yes, they were, for example, they had out of school suspensions compared to some of the kids that did some of the same, if not worse things, that had in-school suspensions. And I was just wondering, is that something that the administrator of the building and or teachers come up with, saying, well, you know what, we're gonna allow this kid to stay in, even though this kid, and it could be a total different school. It doesn't mean it's all in the same school. I'm not saying that.
I have a question. Are you saying that RISE had?
No, not RISE. I was just wondering what the numbers were. That was two different questions. The RISE one was more just, because I haven't looked at the numbers. I haven't really seen too much of the numbers on, how that was actually going.
So I have a discipline report that I generate this year, and I was getting ready to do my first half of the year report. I just haven't got it done, but I can include that in the packet. That's gonna have the disciplinary actions by school. So you can see that in there, but I can also pull the demographics for RISE, so you can see that. Only an administrator can make a decision on exclusionary discipline in a school, so the teachers cannot make that decision. Without knowing the specific cases, what is supposed to be happening is progressive discipline. So what you're not gonna see in the board report is prior disciplinary actions. So it's possible that this is the kid's first offense, and this might be another kid's, this is the 5th time he's called the teacher that name. And so there's gonna be a different disciplinary outcome. The other thing the administrator has to consider is, does the student have a disability, and are we following the student's 504 or IEP appropriately?
That's what my
And so that is, does change the actual disciplinary action that it may be administered. But yeah, I mean, I've got a very comprehensive sheet that I do, and as an admin team, we discuss, and I can, when I do the mid-year one, I can put that in your board packet that has a lot more detail on all disciplinary offenses. In your packet is only in-school suspension, care, like care placements, which is the elementary part of RISE, and out-of-school suspensions. Those are the only things you would see in your discipline report. You're not seeing the kid who got assigned to lunch detention. That's all referrals. We have, unfortunately, a long document.
Okay, one other question on that part. On the RISE Academy, we don't have kids with IEP or 504s, or did we allow that?
If there is a student with there could be students there with 504s. I do not believe we have any students. Do we have any students there with IEPs? No. We specifically, it would have to be a kid with an IEP could be placed there, but it would depend on what's in the IEP.
And we still have to accommodate the
Yes.
504
Yes.
or IEP.
Yeah, so some kids only get, for instance, if a child with an IEP was only getting social work services, we could accommodate that at RISE because we have a social worker. Or if a kid was only getting speech, we could do that. But there's a process through the IEP team that would have to happen. A school cannot, AIDER couldn't put a child with an IEP at RISE without going through the special ed process with Allison. So there's a lot more procedural things that have to happen. I can have DeAndre come in too at some point if the board wants, and kind of give you an update on how things are. I think it's going great. I think he's going to tell you that too.
Seems wonderful.
And it's been very positive, both for AIDER and for the kids at RISE so far this year.
I know it's not possible, but I really wish some of the classes that were taught at RISE were taught at ADA.
Hey, give us some time.
Because I tell kids all the time, you learning about financial literacy is a lot more important than geometry.
So after the board meeting, I'll walk around and we can show you this. I know you've been over there, but we can show you the space.
Board and superintendent's comments.
Hannah wants me to remind you to do your statement of economic interest.
Written down.
Okay.
I was gonna say that, so that's one thing I don't.
If you need help with it, I really struggled with it today, so I can help. You have to fill it out, don't you, Hannah? Or no?
I'm not an administrator.
We can make it work.
That's all I had was the statement of economic interest.
Comments?
Yes, volleyball team is awesome, you guys should come see it.
The hater?
Yes.
Okay.
Both?
Yes.
Synthetic.
Yes, I have not had a chance to see the sixth grade yet, because I'm still working. Dinner when they play, but my goal is to get to one of their games as well. But yes, the seventh and eighth grade look
good.
awesome.
I watched them.
Do they?
Is that correct?
Sixth grade, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, they're definitely, good team to watch. All the kids are.
Yeah, it's really fun watching them. And they're growing, and I don't know the coach, but she seems awesome. And that's probably because we say and yell a lot of the same stuff, but.
But respectfully, right?
Yes, I think she's great.
Anybody else? I have a couple, sorry. First one, thank Nikki for sending out the information. I was gonna do that next day, but I think it was better that she did the day she did it, about coming here. Shout out to Jessica. Well, she just, she's one that sent one of the informational things to us today, that she won the Teacher of the Week. So shout out to her. I think that's fantastic. I know her personally, and she is very good. And Katie, I'd like to thank Katie for getting everything together so we could have, I think, a rather short closed session. And I appreciate all the work that she put in to calculate and formulate, figure out all the things that we did for the principal or superintendent's evaluations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
All right.
And that's it for me. I guess we want to go into closed session.
So for the public, the board is gonna move to closed session for the reasons stated here. There is no action at the end of closed session. I wrote that twice, I think. So procedurally, what's gonna happen is that the board will end closed session, reopen the open session, and adjourn the meeting all at one time. So we're not probably coming back out here.
Yes.
So we need.
I'll be there.
Come see me so we can dance. That's my thing.
I wouldn't have thought that.
I'll make a motion to move to closed session for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal
You've got this memorized.
specific employees.
I'll second it.
The voice vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That, I'm gonna turn the cameras off.